Hi, everyone. Welcome to day 3 of Appian World. I hope you enjoyed the conference so far and are having a good day. My name is Tian Bui. I'm a senior product manager with Appian, and today's session is all about RPA, when to use it, and techniques on how to make the most of it in Appian. Joining me here today is Troy Anderson from Coast Capital Savings. Troy, do you want to give a quick intro?
Sure. So my name's Troy Anderson. I work for Coast Capital Savings. We are a federal credit union in Canada, and we're about 600,000 members, 45 branches, plus we have an online presence. We've been, going down the RPA road for about 6 years now, and we'll get more into that as we go through the presentation. We've been on Appian for about 3 years, and we have about 12 applications that are live now. Some of those RPA, some of them not, but we've got a nice mixed bag there that we've been getting some experience with, and with the help of the team. For myself, my background, I've been in several different industries, from printing to high-tech manufacturing, product development, software development. I went into healthcare for a while, and I transitioned to Coast about 6 years ago into finance. So quite a wide variety of industry, and done a lot of different roles in different capacities there as well. So that's a little bit of who I am.
Thank you. All right, so here's a sneak peek at what we're going to talk about today. First, how RPA fits into our complete automation strategy. Second, unlocking efficiency with RPA. When should you use it? And then lastly, I'll go through a few techniques, recommendations on how you can best leverage RPA in Appian. Before we begin, I want to start off by having you think about your tech stack. So, do you have all the tools you need to support your transformation initiatives? And how well do all of those different technologies work together? Or does it look something like this? I mean, maybe you have one RPA vendor, another for process mining, another for BPM. This is what we call disconnected islands of automation, and they can be a nightmare to govern, and they can lead to long-term tech debt. And that's why we're starting to see the automation market consolidating, where people want to offer everything in one box, just like what Appian offers. But Appian's strength isn't just in the fact that we have everything in one platform, but the fact that everything is so well integrated together, and it's backed by a well-governed data fabric. So Troy, Coast Capital was previously using multiple vendors for different things. For instance, you had a separate RPA vendor. Tell me about your experience with managing these different platforms at the same time, and then why you've strategically chosen to move towards Appian as the sole vendor.
Sure. So as many of you can probably relate, you have more than one piece of technology to look after. And that's where, when I look at all the different technology out there, and Coast is no different, we have many platforms. And all these platforms have capabilities, and there's a lot of overlap between these platforms. So what do you do where? So I worked very deliberately with my architecture and design team to look for clear guidance on what is the purpose of this technology, what is the purpose of that technology, so that we can make deliberate choices about where we're going to invest our development efforts for the long term. Because my solution that I build today isn't just for today, it's for the future. And we have to be able to support that into the future. So that technical debt that we're building needs to live in a platform that we have the resources to manage, support, and maintain it. So when we first started RPA, and I think part of the reason Tian wanted me to talk was we've started with a different RPA supplier, and we've migrated our processes over to the Appian RPA. So with the RPA specific platform, it became a little bit cumbersome to manage. So what that RPA-centric platform motivated us to do was to build the entire process in RPA. Now, what was happening is we're using the RPA functions to really do things they weren't properly designed to do. So by moving into a BPM solution, and once we decided we needed a true enterprise-level BPM technology, we bought Appian, and at the time, we weren't even thinking RPA. But then when I saw there's an RPA function there, I started exploring that and decided, well, it makes more sense to migrate all of our current RPA into the BPM solution, because this offered a unique advantage. Now I could use the process management, the process model, to manage the process and focus the RPA activity on just the task. So RPA is really well designed to handle a specific task where you don't have an API or a direct connection. Looking at some of the RPA-centric platforms and looking at the evolution over the last 6 years that I was watching it, I was seeing them grow. They were adding in more modules, more capability, but they were starting from a foundation of RPA and then adding on capability. Whereas Appian was starting from a true BPM tool that had RPA capability. So it was really the best of both worlds. So that's why we decided to migrate all of our RPA solutions into Appian. And now we're just on that last little bit of getting everything over, and I can simplify my tech stack. I go just with Appian, and I can turn the other one off. So less maintenance, less management, less cost, in having one platform.
Yep, and that's fantastic, Troy. You alluded to a couple of things, which I'll walk us through here. But as you all know by now, Appian is a complete automation platform, allows you to design powerful applications, automate activities, optimize end-to-end processes. And this platform is loaded with a bunch of capabilities, as you can see here. They aren't only unified, they're well integrated and supported by a strong data fabric, giving you everything you need for your digital transformation. And the key is in picking the right tool for the right task. So let's talk about that. In Appian, you can mix and match across many different capabilities, RPA, AI, APIs, etc., and easily switch between them all in one workflow, allowing you to meet the most complex of use cases. With another type of standalone vendor, like what Troy was saying earlier, you might end up using one piece of technology for everything, even though it's not strong at every part of the workflow. But with Appian, you can pick from any of our automation tools and pick the right digital worker for the right strength. So for instance, if your problem relates to updating data in an external system that has modern APIs, great. You can use a call integration to call the API. If your problem involves extracting data from documents or classifying them, use our AI skills because those are strongest in doing that. Now, when does it make sense to use RPA? RPA is best when you need to automate manual, repetitive interactions with systems that lack any other way to automate them. So think legacy platforms, things that don't have APIs. And the more repetitive, manual, and simple the steps, the better it is for RPA. And the advantage of using this is that you can free up your employees and human workers to focus on more value-added and, frankly, more interesting tasks, right? Robots can run 24 hours a day. They don't make human errors. They can handle large volumes, and they can basically be a very cost-effective way to fill automation gaps in your business. And I'm happy to announce now, if you heard in the day one keynote, but Appian RPA isn't only in the Appian Cloud now, it's also available for self-managed customers. So ask me about that afterwards if you're interested. Here are some ways you might think about using Appian RPA. First, you can use it to interact with websites, pull data, write data. You can even interact with desktop applications, think legacy in-house ones that don't have any modern APIs. But you can also interact with modern apps like Excel. You can use it to read and write to, format, run macros, really anything. Appian RPA is great because you can achieve efficiencies without having to wait for these APIs to be built. So Troy, pivoting back to you, I walked through some examples on how and when we identify good RPA use cases. Can you tell us how you identify a good RPA use case and just walk through one example that Coast Capital has?
Yeah, so we've called out our retail clearing process here. And just a quick synopsis of that is at the bank, every day there is a list of transactions that have been put into a hold status. And that status is because the member had a pre-authorized payment that maybe they didn't have the funds in the account for. So we have to decide when do we hit them with a non-sufficient funds charge. So we give them a grace period. So they go into hold, and then we have to clear all of those. So we have to, previously it was done manually. Now that volume could vary anywhere from a few hundred to thousands of transactions in a day. Like end of the month, the volumes always spike because that's when everybody's pre-authorized payments are there. So that end, beginning of the month. But that variation in tasks was, or variation in volume was a key benefit or opportunity for RPA, because it's very easy to deploy more robots. It's very hard to get 10 more workers in from the floor and disrupt all the other business, right? So then you have 10, 15 people working. What's their standardization like? Do they all do it the same way? That's one thing I can tell you is every robot does it the same way because they're all following the same configuration. So there's a benefit right there. It reduces errors, and it just improves that overall robustness of the solution. Gives us that flexibility in capacity, easily ramp them up, ramp them down. And with this process, we have a timeline. We can't start it until 11:30, and it has to be finished by 1:30. So we have a 2-hour window. So again, throwing more robots in there certainly helps us give us that capacity. So with me, we have 25 robots, and my plan is to throw all 25 every day that I can. Get it done as quickly as possible, right? So that's the specific example. Some of the other benefits or the situations that I would look for is in that process, because it's not just operational efficiency that we look for, it's also compliance, risk reduction, it's standardization. So there's a lot of other business benefits and business needs. So even if it's maybe not as, payback isn't on efficiency and ROI that way, there's a lot of other benefits to do it. And those risk and compliance are certainly some of the benefits there. So.
That's great. So now that I have talked about when you should use RPA, how it fits in our complete automation platform, I do want to share some best practices for making the most out of it in Appian. So first, rather than identifying a standalone RPA use case, you have the full platform to your advantage. So I highly recommend finding a use case where RPA sits as part of a broader workflow, and then definitely orchestrate it from our process models. So if you're not familiar, our process modeler is our integration engine. It manages the handoff between different types of smart services, tools, data, etc. And that allows you to pick the best tool for the best task, right? And you can see how easy it is to pass data from one tool to the next in this workflow. So maybe you start with AI to summarize email, or classify documents, and then if it meets certain criteria, it needs to be handed off to an employee to examine. And then if certain conditions are met, maybe you deploy a robot to execute a robotic task. And then lastly, because you have an API with DocuSign, you send all this information over via API to construct a contract in DocuSign. So all of this done seamlessly from the process modeler. And the best part is that you're only using RPA for the part of it that it is the strongest in. So that is the biggest strength of using the process modeler. And now, while RPA is generally great because it allows you to put very little investment into automating a human task, it can prevent necessary process transformation. But with Appian RPA, you don't have that problem, and especially if you're using the process modeler, because it's just built so modular. You can see here that we're calling RPA from one node. If one day you have an API that will replace what the robotic task does, you just simply swap it out and nothing else in your process really has to change. So with Appian, your solutions are future-proof so that you can get quick wins now and then transform your processes later. So Troy, I walked through this process model-centric, approach. I know Coast Capital is doing it because I was helping with that. How have you been able to leverage this design approach and get quick wins in the meantime?
Yeah, so you can see this is a little deeper dive into that retail clearing process, and you can see there on the top line there's the high-level process model. We've called out the two specific RPA features there. The first one is downloading from Excel, right? And that's a desktop system, doesn't have an API, so it makes sense for the bot goes into the core banking system, downloads the Excel, but then we get to load that data right into the BPM solution, where we can do all the logic and the processing of the transactions to know which one has to go first. We can manage the queue and then distribute them off to the bots farther down there to complete the transactions, again, in the core banking system. Now, using RPA at those levels, because we don't have an API to the core banking system. Not that the core banking system doesn't have APIs, they just don't have the right one for me on this process. So now we can go into the queue of our backlog of APIs to get built, and we're certainly in that queue, but it's not going to come in a timely fashion. So what do I do in the meantime? I can't leave my business hanging, so RPA has really enabled us to, let's provide a solution now, get the benefits of the overall process and automating it, but not have to wait for the API to be built. Bit of a double-edged sword there in the reality, because as soon as I have a solution, the priority of the API now I have to manage with that other team. So be careful what you tell them. You guys didn't hear that. My team's here too. So yeah, I think there's certainly some benefits in doing that modular design. As I said, future-proof, but make sure you're looking to the future. Build it for the future, right? So we are intentionally designing with that intent to say, let's make sure our inputs and our outputs of that stage of the process are clearly defined so that when it comes in, it's an easy swap.
Yeah, so speaking of design, I do want to focus on that as the next tip. It may seem obvious, but leverage our low-code capabilities, right? Appian RPA uses the same low-code capabilities present in the rest of the platform. So it's very intuitive to build, test, deploy robotic tasks. And while we do let you extend your robotic tasks with Java, we do highly recommend you use as much available in the product as possible, just because you get so many advantages from doing so. So I said that building robotic tasks is super easy, and you can see that here. This is a screenshot of our robotic task designer. And you can see on the left-hand side that there's a whole actions palette for you to choose from. So you can automate against browser, desktop, etc. And it's as easy as dragging and dropping it onto your screen. But maybe you don't know where to begin. How do you automate the steps of downloading a file from a website, right? Well, actually, the most straightforward way to build in Appian RPA is to use our intuitive task recorder. That can be launched by clicking on the video icon here, and you can see in this GIF that it launches a recording device on your computer, and you just move through the steps as if you were doing the task itself. We record everything, and then when you hit save, we generate the robotic task for you, and it's ready to go. You're ready to go test with it and make adjustments as needed. So with those low-code capabilities, building robotic tasks is very simple, but it's even better because of the integration with the rest of the platform, right? So for instance, within your robotic tasks, you should leverage as much of the other design objects as possible. So reuse your expression rules to query your data, use your constants, etc. While a robotic task is running, leverage your data fabric. So instead of storing your process data in files like Excel or Notepad or something, write it to a process variable and write it to your record so that you can display it elsewhere in the platform. And because you're leveraging objects from a tightly integrated Appian environment, deployment is as simple as everything else. You deploy your robotic tasks along with the rest of your application objects. It's not a separate deployment process. It's seamless and will catch missing precedents, and just like the rest of the platform. So using Appian RPA, incomplete automation eliminates the need for you to have a whole separate team of developers with a different set of skills. Any Appian developer will be able to quickly pick up, so learn, build, test, and maintain your Appian applications. So Troy, you used to have to manage, your separate RPA team and an Appian team. Tell me about how you approached the process of transitioning to one platform and how that experience has been.
Sure, so maybe I'll just take you through the journey of our team. So about 6 years ago, when we started our RPA journey, we hired a small team of RPA developers, and that came with a different mixed bag of skill sets. They knew RPA, but they knew C# and PowerShell and a few other languages. So they had a good base foundation of general programming applications, right? So as we continued to develop in our RPA platform, we grew the team, added more capacity, and that skill set and the processes that we were doing, they had different requirements, so we used a kind of a mixed bag of tools there. So when we brought on Appian, and we said we do want to move forward with Appian as our primary tool in our tech stack, we said, let's train the internal team, right, and get them all moved in there. So we started down the training path with them, with all the online training. We also hired some more senior Appian developers to act as mentors and help coach and maintain. We augmented that capacity or that skill set with a consulting partner and brought that on as well. So as a small team of RPA developers, we had about 4 developers. We're now 15 Appian developers, including all the consulting resources that we have. So we've grown quite quickly over the last couple of years in developing the projects and getting things there. Probably just over a year and a half ago is when we started looking at let's transition all of our RPA from the legacy system into Appian. And that's where, again, we took our existing developers and had them go through the RPA training module, which was quite straightforward, got really good feedback on that, and gave the team the skills they needed to start doing it. And again, working with your team, and we also had the Kickstart program that we worked with you guys on doing the design reviews, looking at the skill set and just looking at the feature set and working on some feature upgrades with you as well.
Yeah, so the transition, you would say, was seamless?
Yeah, it's about as seamless as I could have hoped. So, yeah.
All right, so my next piece of advice is around how to leverage Appian's tools for effective error handling. So in Appian, you don't really need a team to be constantly monitoring for error executions. You can sort of just reroute them as needed. It's very automated, using our capabilities like user tasking and even AI. So for instance, error executions, you can have them send a task directly to a user, and they can either do what the robot was supposed to do, if it's one-off, or you can have them adjust what the robot was supposed to do, and then send the task back to be redone by the robot. So in this case here, as you can see, say a robotic task failed because it couldn't find a name match on a website, and so it couldn't continue the robotic task. For clean error handling, you can have a form sent to a user that asks them for the right name match, and then you can update your system so that next time it happens again, they'll find the right name. And you can even add AI to this process. Here I have a node that looks for semantically similar employee names in the database and then offers suggestions in the form for the human so that their task is made much easier. When they choose the right proper name that should be looked at on the external website, they can hit submit, and then it reroutes back to a robot for reprocessing. So humans aren't just in the loop here, they're fully in control. Aside from seamless error handling, we also have recently introduced our operations console, which provides a single point from where you can monitor and control operations, stay informed, and also take action as needed. So this site is going to help your teams ensure that everything is running smoothly. So I do want to show you a quick walkthrough of this ops console. So when you first log into the operations console, you're going to see a list of your robots, their statuses, their health. We're also surfacing metrics like memory used and disk space used so that you can quickly know when a robot is at risk of failure. So for instance, this robot is showing high disk space used. Memory used is pretty high too, so we can jump into the robot to investigate what's going on. We also give you a bunch of capabilities to take action, so you can hit restart for a robot to clear up some memory, or to handle the disk space issue, you would have to log into your VM and probably clean up some files. But here in the robot, you can see all the executions that it has run or has queued up. You can even click into the execution ID to see even more details logging-wise to help you troubleshoot. So here, back on the landing page, I have 2 robots that are running this retrieve Excel sales info robotic task. And then I have a third robot that's called Salesforce robot. It's online, but it's not doing anything. Now today I happen to know that the queue is very long for this robotic task. And unfortunately, I don't think 2 robots is gonna be enough. So I could spin up a new VM, create a robot, connect them, and bring another robot online. But because I know the Salesforce robot is not going to be used today, I can just reroute it. And you can do this now from the operations console. This ops console, you don't need system admin access, you don't need designer access, it's just an operations role. So what I'm gonna do is jump into the robot pool. By the way, robot pools are groupings of robots that you can assign, and we automatically distribute the work across the robots in the pool. This is the Excel pool. You can see here a bunch of executions that it has run and has queued up. You can see the robotic tasks that it's in charge of running. And so to adjust the robots that are assigned to this pool, you can click Manage Robots. You can see here the 2 Excel robots that I've added. So I will go ahead and add that Salesforce robot here. And when I click Save Changes, this pool now includes 3 robots. So when we go back to the landing page, we will see that this 3rd robot is now going to pick up the Excel task. So just like that, we've been able to reroute work, and at the end of the day, I can go back into the pool, adjust it back to the way it was, and everything works seamlessly. So this operations console, as I mentioned, is brand new. We released it, it was GA in March. You obviously have been working with RPA for the last year before this was made available. I know Coast Capital built their own set of capabilities to fill that gap in the meantime. So do you want to walk through it?
Sure, yeah. So before I get into the specifics here, I'd point out that I really classify 2 personas here, right? So there's what you've just showed is really the view that I need for my team, right? That's where we do the development, and we have like a daily controller, right? To make sure that the platform's running, the system's there, all the bots are in good, healthy shape. But my business teams don't care. They care about their process, and they just expect everything to be running. So what we did is we took an approach here to build them an interface to make them self-managed, because I don't want to have to staff a daily controller to run the operations every day, to make sure the bot processes kick off and that everything's going. That was just, I'm becoming an operations team then. So what we did is we took a view here, and you can see this. There's some screenshots here of the interface we built to enable that retail clearing process to be self-managed. So in the left there, you can see that's the process history, and that's every day they run it, they have the whole history of every transaction that was done, so there's an audit log there. In the top right panel, that is the utilities, right? So that shows them which bots are available to their process. So from there, we haven't enabled what Tian just showed you about assigning new robots, because they don't have authority over all the bots. My team does, right? So there's different personas there, so we didn't expose that to them. And I don't plan to either, because I'm a control freak. The last, on the bottom right there, to me, this was a critical thing. And like, when I look at our old way of doing things, we were receiving emails and then manually triggering things and deploying the bots. And this way, I just said, make me a button. So the developer put a button together and says, okay, to start the credits, hit the blue button on the left. And that kicks off the process. Now, in some scenarios, we can actually build a schedule and say it kicks off at 10:30 every morning. But here there was dependencies from the business to say, well, we can't start this until these other things have happened. So we weren't able to fully automate a schedule. So we said, well, then when you're ready, instead of sending us an email, just hit the button. Right? So now that triggers it, and all the bots deploy, and they go and they run their process. So on the next slide, we would see within that day or that particular run, this gives the detail of every transaction that it's going through. And we put in there, you can see the 159 accepted, 112 rejected. There's some business exceptions. So those are all the happy path defined processes that we have within our RPA solution to say, as it's looking at each one of the transactions, the bot's saying like, okay, this one has the funds in the account now, clear it, right? This one doesn't, that one gets rejected, they're gonna get an NSF charge. The ones where it can't decide, it's saying that, well, there's some weird going on here, the bot will put it into the exception status, and then the business team will go look at it manually, right? And they can see that right away, they can go start, they can work in parallel on it, so it really enables them. So the real goal here was to enable the business team to be self-sufficient, give them access to the features and the views that they need to manage their own process, because they're the ones best set up to manage both their human workforce and their robot force, right? So that's what we did.
I think what's really special about Appian in general is just that you didn't have to wait for us to build something in the product. Because of our low-code capabilities, you build exactly what you need when you need it. And when it comes out, finally, you can leverage the out-of-the-box functionality.
Yeah, and we will be leveraging the operations console, but more at a team and platform level rather than the business team level.
Right. So that's really everything. I do want to do a quick recap of what we talked about today. So Appian's complete automation platform is a better approach to everything, including RPA, because you can use the right tools for the right task. Next, you also learned when to use RPA, so be very strategic about it. If you have a task that's repetitive, it's manual, it involves systems that have no other method of automation, including APIs, use RPA. And lastly, I walked through several techniques on building with RPA and Appian. First, orchestrate with process models. It'll future-proof your applications, but it'll also ensure that you can use the right tool for the right task. Next, you can build extremely fast with our low-code capabilities, including the task recorder and our design objects. And then third, we talked about having many different ways to do error handling, so using AI and user tasking. And then lastly, definitely take advantage of our new operations console for managing your robot workforce. So thank you all so much for your time and attention. I do want to give you an opportunity to ask questions. But before we switch to that, I do have a question of my own for you, Troy. So you have several processes now that you're leveraging with RPA in production. I'm sure we're all interested in knowing, based on your experience, what did you feel like were the key success drivers?
So I think the key success drivers were the training, right? Being able to just reallocate my team, quickly train them, get them up and running, that was a huge benefit, right? So I'm a big proponent of the Appian online training. I think it's done very well. If you haven't done it, go have a look. So the training was certainly good. Having access to the Appian Kickstart program, that provided the design reviews, kind of the best practices, and just access to that expert skill set, right? Working directly with your team on some of the feature development for, like the auto scaling of bots for our own environment. So I don't want to go too far into our platform, but we are a hosted environment by Appian, but the virtual machines for our bots are on our AWS. So there is some connection there. We want to make sure that we have all of our auto scaling and disaster recovery in place for that as well. So there were some features that we worked on together to make that happen. So yeah, it's just been a good partnership and good with the training and everything there. So
that's fantastic. All right, so I'm happy to take questions myself or for Troy for the next couple minutes.
Back there.
Yes.
Hey, howdy. I have a bajillion questions, but I think I've got one in mind. It sounds like the RPA solution that we currently use is your former solution, just from the first letter I heard. But I was curious about when it comes to modeling and modeling, let's say, applications or modeling web-based, I guess, how consistent, how are the elements defined? Are they by attribute? And how consistent is that? Do you see a lot of change in your applications or any of your web interactions that require updating?
Is that a question for Troy or for the platform?
Might be both.
Okay, well, so we handle, I assume you're talking about automating interactions with websites or just anything like that. I mean, we have a slew of selectors and things that we can use to identify elements. So if you can automate it with, for instance, Selenium, you can do it with Appian. And then I assume for you, the question is, like, are your platforms dynamic? Are they easy to automate against, or?
Yeah, so I think what you're getting at is how fragile is it?
Yeah.
Right? RPA is a necessary technology. You need it, but you have to manage it. You have to be on top of it. If there's a browser update that goes out that I don't know about, it can hit me, right? And then we gotta, get in there and make sure that we, get everything working again. So there is still some of that there. It's surface automation. If your surface changes, you need to be aware, right? You have to manage it, right? I wouldn't say that it is more or less. I would say it's still RPA, right?
Any other questions?
Keep going.
If there's none, you're welcome to ask more questions, or we're available here after this session, so feel free to come up also to ask us questions.
Yeah.
Thank you.